Hi there, and welcome to the Cosi Talks Podcast. My name is Cosi Belloso. I'm a physical therapist with over 23 years experience, and my passion is working with the amputee and limb loss community. My mission with Cosi Talks is to educate, inform, and empower amputees, their clinicians, family members, and caregivers. Now, along with being a physical therapist, I'm also a wife and a mother to 4 beautiful children, and I'm a recent breast cancer survivor. So while I'm not an amputee and I don't know what it's like to lose a limb, I do know what it means to have my world turned upside down from one day to the next and to have to go through the recovery and healing process. And I want to help you on your journey. So let's get comfortable. Be sure to grab your favorite drink and have a listen. Ooh, don't forget, please follow this podcast and leave a 5-star review and thumbs up. And if you have any questions or overly flattering comments, drop them below. Hey guys, welcome back to the Cosi Talks Podcast. Some of you might be watching this on my YouTube channel, so you're going to see the video as well as the audio. But as always, welcome. My name is Cosi Belloso, Physical Therapist Amputee Specialist. And today's podcast, I'm really excited. It's kind of a follow-up on the very first podcast that I did. So today's podcast is how to choose a prosthetic foot, right? So the first podcast, which by the way, if you haven't listened to that already, go listen to it, right? It was, what are the different classifications of prosthetic feet? Okay. So today is kind of like the sequel to that one. Okay. So we're going to get into this. So this is something, guys, that this is probably one of the most commonly asked questions is, how do I choose a prosthetic foot? Is this prosthetic foot going to be good for me or not good for me? And I have so many of you as viewers who have emailed me your questions over the years about different types of prosthetic feet out there in the industry and in your search for the perfect foot. Okay. And guys, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. I mean, I could do probably an entire podcast series on how to choose a prosthetic foot. For now, we're just kind of keeping it to these 2 podcasts because I just want to get you started on something that you can take to your prosthetist, something that you can take to your physical therapist and get started in the process. All right. So, on top of the, so we discussed how there's hundreds of prosthetic feet out there in the market. I mean, it's overwhelming. This market has beyond exploded since I started working as a PT 23 years ago. I mean, guys, 23 years ago, we had like 2-3 feet to choose from on the market because they were just so expensive, right? And the technology was still kind of in the infant stages. And now we have hundreds of feet. So that's great news because it means you have hundreds of options. The bad news is, oh my gosh, where do you begin with this, right? And I feel like there's 2 camps of amputees with this. There's the folks who realize just how intense of a decision this is. Like they're realizing, holy cow, this is a really important decision and I am overwhelmed because of the amount of choices and options out there and I don't know where to begin. And then I have, another camp of amputees that they don't really understand the importance of this decision. And I'm not saying that as like a shame or a knock against them. It's just, they're still trying to wrap their heads around the fact that they lost a limb. They're still trying to wrap their heads around what is it going to mean to be an amputee, right? And everything that's involved, from skincare to wearing a liner to getting fit for a socket to figuring out how to move around your home and your life again, right? So some people might just be like, yeah, I'll just take whatever foot my prosthetist gives me and just get me going. I just want to get started with walking, right? And that's understandable, guys. And especially I see this sometimes when people go to certain prosthetist clinics and perhaps the prosthetist doesn't take the time to really explain the choices behind prosthetic feet, right? So this podcast is kind of for both camps, okay? For those of you who are really understanding the enormity of this decision, hopefully this podcast can help calm things down just a little bit in your brain and you'll be able to kind of have a path to go. And those of you who are coming to the realization, right, again, that you'll have a way to get started and to have these conversations, okay? So let's just kind of take you through this, right? So again, the enormity of this decision is, this is the foot you're waking up to every day, right? And I know it sounds like kind of the master of the obvious, but this is the foot that is going to take you to your breakfast table in the morning. This is the foot that's going to help you get to the bathroom. This is the foot that will help you get to work, perform your work, right? You're going to spend more time with this foot than you do with your spouse and your family, right? So if you're waking up to this foot every single day, you want to do the best that you can at choosing the right foot for you at this time. Now, whether that means this is the first foot you are choosing for yourself, or maybe this is your second or third or your upgrade of a foot. Okay, so here's some tips and tricks to kind of get you on the right path. Okay, so tip number one, you got to arm yourself with knowledge, right? And those of you who have been watching my Cosi Talks live show on Wednesday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and yes, that was a total shameless plug, you know that the mission of my show is to educate, inform, and empower you in the amputee community. Okay. And this might be you as an amputee. This might be you being a family member or a caregiver of an amputee, or this might be you, a clinician that you have started working with amputees and you really want to give your patients this kind of support, right? Arm yourself with knowledge. And again, guys, I'm going to refer you back to the previous podcast and blog where I talked to you about the classifications of prosthetic feet. Okay. A lot of these feet on the market have really awesome, cool names. Like we have the Odyssey by College Park. We have the Maverick. We have the Rush Foot. We have a Triton. We have all these really cool names, but they don't really tell you much about the foot itself, right? So you have to learn what are the different classifications of feet and what they are meant to do, right? And who are they meant to serve? Right? The person who is struggling to get from their bed to their wheelchair and just wants the ability to maneuver in their home safely with a prosthetic foot is a different candidate than a person who is out walking on uneven terrain on a construction site for 14 hours of the day, right? So we have wonderful choices. We just need to know more about them. So in the previous podcast and my blog, I really lay it out for you in a really easy to understand way. Okay. And I also have cheat sheets. So once you listen to the podcast and read the blog, there's a cute little download cheat sheet where it's a quick reference for you on the different types of prosthetic feet so that you can take this with you to your prosthetist appointment and your PT appointment and discuss this with your team because you are an important part of this decision-making process. All right. So number one, we've talked about it. Arm yourself with knowledge, right? Because this is what's going to help that communication with your team. Okay. And you are the number one person making the decision on the team. Your prosthetist, your PT, and your doctor, they are important and you need their input. Yes, absolutely. Okay. But ultimately, you're the one taking this foot home. Okay. So always remember that. All right. Once you've kind of armed yourself with knowledge, you've read through the blog and podcast, you've kind of familiarized yourself a little bit on the different kinds of prosthetic feet. The next thing you do is you need to make a list. Okay. You need to make a list of activities that you do on a daily basis. Okay. And it all starts with getting out of bed, right? And I'm creating a worksheet for you so that you can kind of have a list of worksheet of just items that'll kind of, cue you in as to what you need to think about in these activities. Okay. So you need to think about your activities of daily living. We call those ADLs. You may have heard your PT and your occupational therapist use this terminology. Okay. So ADLs include things like I said, how do you get out of bed? How do you get to the bathroom? Do you use a shower, a bathtub? Do you take a sponge bath in your bed? And that's how you do your hygiene. How do you get to your meals? Do you have your meals at your bedside? Do you go and sit at the dining room or kitchen table? What does that look like? Okay. How do you get from point A to point B in your house? So for example, do you like to sit in a particular chair in your living room at night to watch TV with your family? Do you like to sit on your front porch or your backyard? How do you get into and out of your home? Do you have steps? Do you have stairs? Do you have a ramp set up? Do you go out through your front door? Do you go out through your garage door? Okay. And guys, I know I'm like throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you, but I have a worksheet for this so that you can just have a list of all these things and just check off what applies to you. Okay. And then, so those are kind of like the ADLs, the things that you do around your home. Okay. Then you take it a step further. Those of you who are working, those of you who are looking to get back to work, what does that look like? Do you sit at a desk all day for your work? Are you up on your feet walking around all day? Like one of my longtime viewers, Ashley, she is a teacher, a high school teacher for special needs children. So she's really hoofing it around her school all day long and very active, right? Do you drive around in your car all day to go visit clients or to do whatever work it is that you do? What is it that your work requires you to do? Do you have to lift a minimum of 20 pounds, 50 pounds? Do you have to stand up and squat down all day like a physical therapist does, right? What is it that you have to do at work? Okay. And then last, but certainly not least, your community, your life. Okay. And this is something that when I worked home health for 8 years, this was really important for me to ask my patients, and not just my amputee patients, all of my patients. Right? So when I worked home health, I was working with people who were homebound. And one of the questions I would ask them is, what is it that you want to get back to doing? Do you want to get back to church? Do you want to be able to go to the grocery store? Right? Do you want to be able to visit family and friends? Do you like to go to bingo night? I had several of my senior citizens that they wanted to get back to bingo night. What did that look like? Okay. Are you looking to get into adaptive sports? Are you looking to get back to your fitness, back to your gym? Okay. Here in Florida, a big one is also getting back to the pool and getting back to the beach, right? So make a list of all of these things that you want to be able to do with your prosthetic foot. Okay. And you're going to take this list to your physical therapy appointment and your prosthetist appointment. Your physical therapist needs to see this list of activities because they need to know what goals to set for you and how to get you to those goals. It's not just make a person stronger, make them have better balance, make them have better range of motion. No, I want to see something specific for my patients, because if my patient wants to go to the beach, then my goals need to be strengthening them and getting their balance so that they can walk confidently on uneven terrain and on sandy terrain. Okay. And then from the prosthetist standpoint, when they see what your activities of daily living are, when they know what your work requirements are, when they know what your life activities that you want to get back to, this is going to help them determine, they're a candidate for this kind of a foot, this kind of a foot versus the other kind of a foot. Is this making sense, guys? Okay. It's funny, I don't have an audience now, so it's like I'm always like looking for feedback from my audience to see if you guys are with me or not. So, leave some comments in the comments section. Give me a shout out, do something there. Help me out here, okay? So we talked about number 1, arm yourself with knowledge. Number 2, make yourself a list of all your activities. And again, I'm going to have a worksheet for this that you guys can download, okay? Number 3, once you've made this list of activities, right? And this is also on the worksheet, I want you to think about how you do these activities. And you're just like, what do you mean, Cosi? I just do the activities. No, here's what I mean. Are you currently moving around your home in a wheelchair? Are you using a walker? Are you using crutches? What did you look like before your amputation, right? Some of my folks who are trauma, like motorcycle, car accident, work-related accidents, cancer patients, they, for the most part, they were independent, meaning they were going about their activities with 2 anatomical legs, no walker, no crutches, no nothing, right? Some of my vascular-related amputations, right, they were pretty sick prior to their amputation, and they were, their mobility was already declining. So many of them were already using a walker and crutches prior to their amputation, right? Basically, you need to think about what your before picture looked like, right? What your current picture looks like and what your future picture can look like. Okay? So again, going back to why is this important? When you go to your PT and prosthetist appointments, they need to know this. When my patients come to see me in my physical therapy clinic, I want to know what they looked like prior to their amputation, because it gives me a good idea as to where I can reasonably set their goals, right? If I have someone who was, running a couple of miles a week prior to their amputation, and they come to see me now with crutches, right, with their amputation because they're just starting to learn to use their prosthetic leg, I can reasonably assume that I'm going to be able to get them into independent mobility again, meaning I can get them walking without crutches again, right? Versus someone who was perhaps using a walker to get around their day, and perhaps they prior to their amputation, and they were probably independent and moving around quite nicely with the walker. That one we say, okay, we'll set the goals a little differently. Okay, does this make sense, guys? And the same thing for your prosthetist. Your prosthetist will want to know, how were you getting around? This is really going to be applicable for my bilateral amputees. Okay, so knowing what it is that you're using to get around your home and your community as a bilateral amputee will also determine the kind of foot we're going to be using. What is your future going to look like? Okay, are you planning on using the wheelchair as your primary source of mobility? Okay, are you planning on using it just in your home and you're hoping to use your prosthetic devices in the community, or the opposite? Okay, so these are all things. It's not just what activities you're doing, but how you're doing them. What does that look like? Okay, and again, working with your team, talking to your physical therapist, saying, okay, what are goals that are reasonable for me to attain? Okay, and I'll just make a little asterisk note on this, guys. This brings me to my next point in terms of writing your list of goals. There are a lot of times, even with 23 years experience, guys, I don't have a crystal ball, right? I cannot predict 100% of the time where I will be able to get my patients in terms of their goals with mobility. Okay, there are times where a patient has come into my clinic and I'm just like, yeah, this person's not going to do great. I don't know. I'm going to try my best, and they surprise me and they end up becoming independent ambulators. And then vice versa. Some people that come into my clinic and I go, okay, this person should be able to walk completely independently. And, for whatever reason, they don't. They have setbacks, they have issues, they have things going on, and they don't make it to those goals, right? One thing I've learned to tell my patients, and again, for any clinicians listening and who are new to working with amputees, is when you're setting your goals for mobility, right? Set the reasonable goal. And I know that sounds like, well, duh, but sometimes you have to tell a patient, I can get you to this point. I know I can get you to this point if you follow the treatment protocols and we work together. Beyond that, we're going to have to wait and see. Okay. And that for me is something that I've learned as a clinician. I've been a clinician for 23 years. I've been working in healthcare industry for 30 years. Okay. And I've learned not to make promises that I cannot keep. Okay, as badly as I want. And it's not to say I don't give my patients hope and that I don't encourage them and I don't say, hey, let's reach for the stars with your mobility. Okay, but when it comes to setting goals and when it comes to choosing prosthetic feet in accordance with those goals, I want to be realistic with my patients because I want them to succeed. Okay, guys? So you can see there's a lot of things at play here with making these lists and giving your clinicians this really valuable information. And this is how you can set yourself up for success. Okay? Now, here's a tiny little asterisk that I have to put in here. Okay, when it comes to goals with mobility, when it comes to prescribing mobility devices like walkers, crutches, canes, this falls under the purview of the physical therapist. And again, I have nothing but the utmost respect for the prosthetists that I work with, and I have some phenomenal clinicians that I get to work with. Okay. But a lot of times I've had viewers come to me who say, oh, my prosthetist gave me a walker, or they ordered a walker, or they ordered crutches, a cane, and they did not consult with the physical therapist, right? So the person was assigned a walking aid that was not appropriate for them. Their insurance gets billed for it, and now the insurance will not pay anymore. Okay. So guys, when it comes to setting the goals for your mobility and what you will be using, this is where the physical therapist needs to make those decisions with you. Yes? Okay. Awesome. Now, once you've written all this stuff down, right? So there's a lot of background homework assignment, guys. To me, there's a lot of homework that you do before you even come into the prosthetist or the PT clinic, right? But in doing so, you're setting yourself up for a good foundation, setting yourself up for success. Okay. So I like to repeat things because I think repetition is the mother of memory. So let's just go through that little checklist again. Number one, arm yourself with knowledge. And you can do that by listening to my previous podcast and blog on the different types of prosthetic feet. Okay. Number 2, make a list of your activities that you do on a daily basis, right? This includes your home activities. This includes your work activities, your community, and your life quality of life activities. Number 3, once you make a list of these activities, figure out how you do these activities, right? What kind of devices are you using? How did you used to do it before amputation? How do you hope to do it after amputation? Number 4, you write a list of those goals, right? List of the things that you want to be able to do in your life with this new prosthetic foot and leg. And keeping in mind that you're going to be doing your therapy, right? And working with your PT and your prosthetist to get to these goals. Okay? After you've done all this, then it's time to take these lists, take all this information, and bring it to your prosthetist office. And guys, I've got cheat sheets that you can use, these worksheets that you're able to download them off the website. I'll put links down wherever we need them so that you can find these cheat sheets and just reference sheets to kind of jog your memory. Because I don't know about you, but I know when I go to see my doctor sometimes, everything flies out of my brain the minute the doctor walks into the room. So I usually have my cheat sheet checklist of things that I need to ask the doctor and talk to him or her about, So I'm going to give you those cheat sheets and worksheets as well. Okay? So then the fun really begins, right? So you sit down, you have the come to Jesus talk with your prosthetist about these are my goals, these are my activities, this is what I do in my life, this is what I'm looking for in a foot. Then you two, and ideally the physical therapist is also a part of this conversation, decide what classification of foot would best suit you. Okay. And if you haven't listened to the previous blog, this part might be a little bit confusing. So if you need to pause, go listen to that other podcast and then come back and continue this one. So you're going to determine which classification of feet works best for you. Okay. Your prosthetist might think, okay, you know what? The dynamic response foot. We need to look for prosthetic feet that have dynamic response characteristics, or we need to look for a multi-axial foot for you. Okay. Now, here's where it gets just a tiny bit sticky, but stay with me. You and your prosthetist might find that there are 2 different types of classifications that might work for you. Okay. And this is perfectly normal, guys. There's a lot of crossover in these classifications of feet, right? There have been so many times where I've thought for sure, my patient was a total dynamic response foot person. Like that's the kind of foot that they needed. And they trialed a hydraulic foot and loved it. Right. So I've learned over the years just to kind of be a little bit more flexible with that. And you might notice, well, you know what? Some of the characteristics about dynamic response look awesome. Some of the characteristics of hydraulic foot look awesome. Oops, I see something here about multi-axial that appeals to me, right? The point is, if you know in your head the function of these prosthetic feet, you're not going to have any trouble deciding what kind of classification to use. And you'll feel comfortable saying, okay, I'll try 2 different classifications of feet. Okay. Now, here's another fair warning, right? When let's say you and your prosthetist have decided, let's try out a dynamic response foot and a hydraulic foot, right? So you go to the manufacturer websites and you start looking around for dynamic response foot and hydraulic feet. Please remember, the websites on these manufacturers, they don't really list the feet by these classifications. I wish they did. And, maybe they need to give me a call to help them do organization that way. But they don't, okay? Each one of these manufacturers, and they're amazing, guys. I'm not ragging on these manufacturers. These are wonderful companies, and I love working with them. But, they do present things on their website a little differently, right? So again, this is where your prosthetist is really going to be helpful because he or she can look into like the specs and the descriptions of these feet, and they'll be able to suss out, oh, okay, this is a hydraulic foot, or nope, this is a multi-axial foot, or this is a hybrid foot. It's got a little bit of multi-axial and a little bit of dynamic response characteristics in there, right? And they'll help you decipher, right, which of these feet belong to which classification. Okay. And again, this is where also the experience of your prosthetist comes into play, because your prosthetist, all prosthetists, and even myself as a physical therapist, we all have our feet that we've worked with patients and we have experience with. And, so this is where you're going to be pulling on their experience. Okay. Now, that being said, right, let me remind you, hundreds of feet out there on the market. Right? So while your prosthetist is hopefully very savvy on many of those feet, your physical therapist, if they're an amputee specialist, they're also going to know several of these feet. We are not going to know every single foot out there on the market. We won't. It's just not possible. Okay. So this is where you pull out the ace in your pocket. Okay. If you and your prosthetist are kind of hitting a dead end and you're just like, not really sure we're exploring all the options, this is where you call the sales rep, or more importantly, your prosthetist will call the sales rep. All right. So all of these companies, right? College Park, Proteer, Oser, Ottobock, Phil Hour, and I'm sure I'm missing more people, right? Blatchford, they all have sales reps that are assigned to your particular region, right? And your prosthetist is going to know how to get in touch with these sales reps. These sales reps are going to be the experts on all these feet. I mean, it makes sense, right? So they're going to know about all the feet that are on the website. They might even know about a couple of feet that may not be listed on the website, right? And they're the ones who are really going to be able to talk to you about the ins and outs of these feet. Okay. And it works both ways, guys. These sales reps, they have to make a sale, right? They're trying to make a living. So they're going to try to give you as many options as possible. Okay. And this is your chance to ask them all of these questions about the feet. Okay. So if you feel like you're not really getting a whole lot of options and you're still not really clear, just ask your prosthetist, hey, can we talk to the sales rep from such and such company so that they can really talk us through what the options are? And then here's another little nugget of wisdom. And I did not put this in the blog part. So those of you listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube podcast, you're going to get an in on this. Sometimes sales reps are looking for people to test out new feet. Shh. Okay. I'm not going to name names, but there are some companies out there that are looking to test out their new feet. Okay. So if you happen to fit the profile, the criteria of what they're looking for, you could potentially get the chance to trial out a new foot. And that's kind of a really cool experience, right? So I'm just giving you that behind the scenes look on that. Okay. And just kind of put that little bug in your prosthetist ear. Okay. Especially if you're just and this is really good, especially for those of you who are experienced amputees that you've already had maybe a foot or two that you've been through, and you know what a good foot should feel like. You know what you're looking for in a foot. You would be a really good candidate for maybe trialing out some of these new feet. Just saying. Okay. So here's I got a lot of warnings here, guys, because I got all this information I want to give, and I've been wanting to do this podcast for a while. So you're going to get everything in the kitchen sink when it comes to these warnings. Sometimes, and this has happened to me. Sometimes I will call one of my local sales reps and I'll say, hey, I've heard about this hoopy scoopy new foot that you got going on. What kind of a foot is it? Right? And, sometimes my sales reps are a little hesitant because I'll ask them, can you please tell me, is this a dynamic response foot? Is this an energy storing foot? Is this a multi-axial foot? Right? And they'll just kind of hem and haw a little bit. And they're like, well, we can't really classify it as this, and we don't want to classify it as that. And and a lot of it is because the technology nowadays is kind of melding a little bit together. So sometimes sales reps will kind of eye roll a little bit at me when I'm really pressuring them for a classification. But again, for me, it just boils down to, I just need to know what the general function of this foot was meant to do. Okay. So, just a little fair warning. Sometimes the sales reps might be a little hesitant to put a label on a foot like that, but, just explain to them why. Just explain to them, this is why I want to know the classification, because this is going to tell me the function of the foot. Okay. All right. Moving on. When it comes to, hang on, I'm checking out my cheat sheet, and I have my cheat sheet notes here for the podcast. So you've gone to the prosthetist. You guys have determined which classification of foot would be good for you. Okay. Now it's time to trial the feet. And this is the part where I want you to put your advocate hat on. And this is where you're going to put your proverbial foot down. Okay. And insist on trialing at least 2 feet. Okay. And this is something that will, I have a lot of soapboxes. I can pretty much open my own Bath and Body Works with the amount of soapboxes I have as a physical therapist working in the amputee community. This is one of my big soapboxes. Okay. And it's happened to me, guys. I've had patients come in that they went to their prosthetist to get fit for their first foot, sometimes not even their first foot, like they're already an experienced amputee and they went to a new prosthetist for whatever reason. And the prosthetist basically just gave them a foot and said, here is your foot, off you go. Do not let this happen to you. Even if you are a novice amputee, I want you to trial out at least 2 feet. Okay. And those of you who are a bit more experienced, meaning you've already learned the mechanics of gait and walking, and you've had a chance to trial out, this might be your second, third, fourth foot that you're getting at this point. Okay. You truly understand the value of trialing out different feet, and it might take more than 2 feet. Okay. And this is a very behind the scenes look. Many patients do not understand that they have the right to trial more than 1 foot. And you hear me taking on, I've got my mom tone voice on right now because this is how serious I feel about this. And this is how upset I've gotten in the past when I've had patients come and tell me this, that their insurance paid thousands of dollars for a foot that they didn't get to trial out, and it's not the appropriate foot for them. And now they're stuck with this foot. Okay. The majority of prosthetic feet companies out there offer trial programs. Okay. I'm going to speak specifically about College Park because I have a partnership with them and I know about their foot trial program. I am not as familiar with the other ones, only that I know that they have one, right? So other feet companies have trial programs and you need to look up what their policies are. I can tell you College Park has a 30-day trial program. They will send you a prosthetic foot made for you. And you get to trial it out for 30 days. And I mean, you get to take this foot home with you, not just trial it out in your prosthetist clinic. You get to take this foot home with you, trial it out for 30 days. If it does not work out, you get to return it. No penalties. Okay? Now, again, I'm not going to speak on other companies because I don't know what their specifics are on their trial foot programs, but I can tell you they have them. So I am serious as a heart attack when I say you should trial at least 2 prosthetic feet. Okay. And now I'm going to answer because I know there's somebody out there going, but Cosi, I trialed this first foot and I felt like Superman. Why do I need to trial out a second foot? And that does happen, guys. Here's why. Number one, if you trial out a second foot and it's not as good as that first foot, then congratulations. Now you really have it in your brain that you, in fact, are using the right foot. Okay. Second thing, as amazing as that first foot was, maybe you'll find something that's even better. The point is, you don't want to sign on that dotted line for a foot unless you know for sure you got the right one. Okay. And yes, it is going to require more work on the part of your prosthetist. It's going to mean having to have you come into the clinic to put and swap out the feet. It's going to mean that they have to order the trial foot, right? And they're going to have to do some behind the scenes work for this. Guys, I'm going to tell you another secret. The good prosthetists, they don't bat an eyelash at having to do this. The prosthetists that are perhaps not on the ball might give you some resistance. And that might be the time to look for another prosthetist. And guys, I'll be doing a blog on that. I've done several live shows on how to choose a prosthetist, how to choose a physical therapist. This is one of those speaking points. If you have a prosthetist or a prosthetist clinic, it may not be the prosthetist, it may be the rules of the clinic or maybe whatever's going on with the clinic, and they are not allowing you to trial 2 feet, you need to go find another prosthetist. Okay. And I know that's kind of harsh and it's hard to say that. And it's kind of hard to just really take ownership and put your foot down in that way. But I've spent the last, 7 minutes talking about this. So this is important. Okay. And here's the thing, and I say this analogy all the time, when you go buy a car, you test drive the car. At least I hope you do, especially if you're buying a car that you've perhaps never used before. If you've always been a Toyota person and then you decide you're going to buy a Honda and you've never driven a Honda before, I would hope that you would go and test drive the car. Why wouldn't you do anything less for the foot that is going to be a part of your body and be with you all day. Okay. All right. So that is my soapbox rant. Here we go. Right now, when you have your trial foot, go forth and trial. Okay. So again, going back to the College Park Trial Foot program, it's 30 days, dude. Get out there and go trial out that foot. Do it safely, right? I don't want you doing anything crazy that's going to get you hurt. Okay. But go trial out that foot. For me, I love it when my patients bring me check sockets and their trial prosthetic feet. Those are my favorite kind of patients to work with. And it's also my favorite prosthetist to work with, right? We'll talk about sockets another day. Okay. But I love it when patients bring me their trial feet because I know what I have to do with my patients to really test it out. Okay. I know that with XYZ patient who is looking to get back to the outdoors, that I got to take them out into the parking lot. I got to take them to an outdoor place somewhere near my clinic, right? And make them go up and down grass and sand and uneven terrain. And we trial that foot out, and we do it within the safety of their mobility, like, within the safety of what they're able to do, right? But we can trial it out. And that's the beauty of going to a PT clinic is we're set up to trial out and do a bunch of crazy things in a safe manner. Okay. Right. And this can tell us, yes, this foot is working out. No, this foot's not working out. Okay. Right. So this is something that, once you get that trial foot, go and trial it. Okay. And again, your PT is going to help you kind of discern. All right. Because there's two things that happen when you put on a prosthetic foot. You either put it on and you feel like you're walking on clouds and you love this foot and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing ever. Right. And then there's some that you put the prosthetic foot on and you're just like, right. So this is where taking it to your PT clinic and your PT teaching you how to use the foot and how to really wring out all the bells and whistles that foot has to offer, right? It can really help you determine if this is the right foot for you or not. And it might take a little time to fall in love with that foot. Okay. So there's a lot of different scenarios here. And this is again, where the PT can really shine and help you out here. Okay. So then you've trialed the foot. The time has come, right? It's time to give out that final rose, right? All right. So, again, guys, this is the part that this is where you have to make the ultimate decision, right? If you've done your due diligence, right? You did all the background homework. You pulled in input from your physical therapist. You pulled in input from your prosthetist, right? Time to make that final decision. All right. If you've done through all these paces, you're going to be confident in your decision-making process. You will have determined, yes, this is the foot for me because the minute I put it on, I fell in love with it. I compared it with another foot and I'm still in love with it. Or I put this foot on, didn't love it right away, but because I worked with my therapist, we were able to really acclimate to the foot and really get all the benefits from it. And now I'm really loving this foot, right? Now, here is the other, sorry, I'm like looking through my notes here, guys. Bear with me. Okay. Before you sign on the dotted line, this is probably my last piece of advice, right? And I might actually, I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers when I say this, but it's my podcast. So I'm going to ruffle feathers. Look at the return policy. Okay. It doesn't happen very often, meaning when somebody kind of follows all of these steps and really takes the time to do their homework and trial out the foot and work with their team, this is going to set you on a path of success to choosing the right prosthetic foot for you at this point in your life. Okay. It might change a few years down the line, but you'll be pretty successful. Every once in a while, somebody does all their homework and they trial the foot and they take it home. And for whatever reason, the magic is not there anymore. Okay. Before you sign the dotted line for this foot, look at the return policy for the manufacturer and have your prosthetist confirm that return policy for you. Okay. Is it a pain in the neck to have to return a prosthetic foot? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Especially when you have insurance involved. It's a bit of a pain. I'm not going to lie. But again, this is the foot you're going home with. This is the foot you're living with. This is the foot you're paying thousands of dollars, or your insurance is paying thousands of dollars for this. And this is the foot you're going to have for the next couple of years, right? Those of you who perhaps do not have as diligent a clinical team, perhaps you don't have a prosthetist who's real keen on letting you trial out feet, or maybe the physical therapist you're working with does not have a whole lot of amputee experience, okay? You really want to know the return policy on your prosthetic foot. And again, this is the part where you're going to have to advocate for yourself a little bit more and squeak that wheel if it turns out you got to return it. Now, you do need to follow the rules. I'm not saying you just return it like 6 months later after you've used it. No. Like, read carefully about the return policy and make sure that you're following those rules in the event that you need to use it. Okay, I am talked out. I have to go pick up my children from school. Guys, thank you for joining me on this podcast. Like I said, I've got a blog where I've written all of this down, everything that I talked about today, some really helpful links in the blog as well. So go to my website, read the blog. And again, I have those cheat sheets. So I have the worksheet that has all the activities and things like that that you need to let your prosthetist and PT know about. So all you have to do is just kind of check off or circle the activities that pertain to you to kind of have a memory jogger when you go to your appointments. If you listen to the previous podcast, again, classifications of prosthetic feet, great downloads available there as well. All right, guys, I am going to head out, but just a reminder, I am going live Wednesdays, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Cosi Talks Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And I have all sorts of links below as to how you can reach me, how you can sign up for my text alerts, and all that kind of fun stuff. So leave me, please, a 5-star review and leave me some flattery if you like in the comments section, or just give me a shout out. And I will see you guys next time.